So you may know, hopefully at this point, but our theme for 2021 is bold moves, that we want to be living with nothing held back and nothing reserved. I can tell you about a bold move I think God's calling me to, and therefore by association you to. About 5 years ago, a friend of mine named Cliff he encouraged me to write a book. And I love Cliff, so I took him very seriously, but it wasn't anything I felt called to at all. And then another buddy encouraged me to write a book, and it wasn't anything that I thought I should do. It just seemed like vanity for me to write something. Everything's kind of been said by people far smarter than I am. But a couple of months ago, I was sitting and talking with Nat and thought, now there's the story I want to write. There's the story I want to tell, and it's our story. It's your story and my story, and the story of what God is doing in Charlestown through Christ Church. And so I'm going to ask you to come and write a book with me. And what I want to happen is see each of you tell your story, or a lot of you tell your story of what God's done in your life. And for some of you, it might be how you found our church, or why you love living in Charlestown, and what it looks like to live in Charlestown and be part of a new church in Charlestown. But for others of you, it's going to be stories that maybe are painful or evoke some tough memories, but places where God met you at your lowest moment, at your lowest point. And we'll even keep those stories anonymous. Like if you don't want your name told on that, I would rather you err on the side of honesty where we choose anonymity than you holding something back or telling something easy that robs God of some glory. So I'll tell you the truth. There's some of you who I will call out by name. I want to hear your story. I want you to tell your story. You know, I think about Howard. Howard, you need to tell your story of what God's done in your life, and I know you're going to. Renee, everybody needs to hear your story of how you met Christ and how you love our church and love this community. I think about Coach Coleman. I think about Ed Walker. People need to hear your story of coming up in this neighborhood, now seeing a church in this neighborhood, and how you've come to follow Christ. I think about Kelly. I think about Nicole and what God's doing in your life. I think about Barb. I think about Carla. I think about those stories. I think about Natalie, my wife, and what God's done in her life. So many of you, so many powerful stories of God meeting where you are, loving you where you were, but then calling you to a new place. And here's why I want us to tell these stories. So here's going to be kind of the format of the book. You're going to write a piece, and I'm going to work with you on it over the next few weeks. And then I'm going to talk about why I love being your pastor and why you are such a special part of what God's doing in Charlestown and through Christ Church. And then we're going to put all those stories together with some other information. And when somebody visits Christ Church Charlestown for the first time, we're going to put that book in their hand. Because there's going to be people who come visit our church, and they're going to read your story and how God's story intersected your story. And the whole time they're reading it, they're going to be wondering, well, can God meet me? And your story is going to give them power to allow God to speak into their story. So we people who visit our church over the years, and maybe you've already been one of these folks who wonder, is there room for me here? Would I fit in here? Have I been too bad or too unbelieving or too whatever? And your story is going to empower them. God's going to leverage it to show that everybody can be part of his family. So I'm looking forward to doing this. I'm scared. I'm nervous. Honestly, I've held this off for 5 years. And I don't want to do this without you. But I do want to do this with you. And I want to see what God's going to do in us and for us and through us as we begin to do this together. So I am super excited. My bold move for 2021 is to write a book with you about what God is doing in our church, in your lives, and in Charlestown.